They say every generation has a moment when it must decide to kneel or to stand. And for Jamaica, that moment might have already come and gone, silently, behind closed doors. What if Jamaica had a leader like Ibrahim Traoré, someone who spoke the truth without fear, who refused every Western loan dressed up as aid, who didn't bow to foreign embassies or billion-dollar investors with smiles that hide chains? Would Jamaica still be poor? Would its people still beg for visas to work on foreign farms while foreign corporations mine its hills and own its beaches? Listen to the end, because what you're about to hear will shake you to the core. The story begins on a humid night in Kingston, when a group of university students gathered outside the gates of Gordon House. They were not protesting bus fares or election promises, they were chanting one name: Traoré. They had seen videos of the young Burkina Faso captain rejecting French domination and kicking out Western troops. They saw his soldiers farming side by side with villagers. To them, he wasn't just African, he was the proof that leadership could still mean courage. Among the students was Marcia Williams, a 6-year-old political science graduate who once interned at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. She had seen documents most Jamaicans never would. Papers stamped Private Consultation U.S. Development Project. They were not about development, they were about control. She knew that some of Jamaica's biggest policy recommendations came directly from foreign embassies, dictated by Western economists who had never lived a single day in poverty. She told her friends, "Traoré doesn't wait for permission, he acts. If Jamaica had someone like him, we'd already own our bauxite again." The next morning, her words began to spread online. A TikTok clip of her speech reached nearly 500,000 views in 24 hours. The caption read, "What if Jamaica had its own Traoré?" It started as a question. But by the end of the week, it had become a movement. The government's reaction was immediate and nervous. Cabinet ministers dismissed the idea as dangerous populism. State-run media labeled it social media mischief. But something strange happened. Ordinary Jamaicans began sending videos from their communities. Fishermen from Street Mary, farmers from Clarendon, taximen from Spanish Town, all recording short clips saying the same thing: "We tired of being used. We need a real leader now." By the third week, the slogan, "Traoré Spirit," was painted on walls in Halfway Tree and across Montego Bay. No one claimed responsibility, but police began investigating what they called acts of coordinated vandalism. Behind the scenes, however, something more explosive was brewing. Marcia received an anonymous email from a source identifying himself only as Dread. It contained scanned documents from a private contract signed 5 years earlier between the Jamaican government and a Western consortium called AgriWorld Holdings. The deal gave the foreign company exclusive rights to manage 40% of Jamaica's agricultural exports, including rum, sugar, and coffee, for a period of 25 years. The payment? Less than what Jamaica earns from tourism in a single month. She was stunned. But what truly horrified her was a secret clause in the fine print. The government of Jamaica agrees to prioritize importation of fertilizers, seeds, and equipment from approved Western suppliers. That meant the country couldn't even grow its own food without buying from the very nations that once enslaved its ancestors. Marcia showed the files to her professor, Dr. Everett Muir, an old nationalist who once ran for parliament in the 1982nd. He looked at the papers and whispered, This is modern-day slavery, written in legal English." He warned her that exposing it would be dangerous. "These contracts are backed by embassies, banks, and even intelligence agencies," he said. "People who talk too much about them disappear quietly." But Marcia couldn't stay silent. That night, she uploaded a short video saying, if Traoré was Jamaican, these deals would never happen. He would burn them on live television. The clip went viral again, but this time it drew international attention. Western journalists called her a radical. Local politicians called her a misguided youth. But the people, the ordinary Jamaicans, began to believe her. Soon, a leaked audio recording surfaced on an underground news channel. It captured a phone call between a senior Jamaican minister and a Western diplomat discussing how to handle the Traoré narrative. The minister could be heard saying, "We can't allow that kind of talk to spread here. It gives the people ideas." The diplomat replied coldly, "Then shut it down. You know what to do." The recording shook the island. It was the first undeniable proof that foreign powers were guiding local leaders to silence national pride. Within 24 hours, Marcia's apartment was raided. Her laptop was seized. She went missing for 3 days. When she finally reappeared, pale and trembling, she refused to speak of what happened, but her first post back online simply said, "They tried to scare me. I'm not scared. Jamaica deserves better." From that moment, the Traoré spirit became more than a movement. It became a threat. The government called an emergency cabinet meeting. Intelligence reports showed the movement had spread to the diaspora. Jamaicans in London, Toronto, and New York were marching with signs reading, "Africa Rising, Jamaica Awakening." As international media picked up the story, one headline from a French outlet read, "Jamaican youths inspired by Burkina Faso's revolutionary president." The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The same nations that once praised democracy were now warning Jamaica against radical nationalism. But what the government didn't know, not yet, was that the movement had already reached deep inside their own institutions. In the coming weeks, shocking leaks, secret deals, and unimaginable betrayals would surface, each one more devastating than the last. And all of it would start with one hidden file, one traitor among the powerful, and one unstoppable question echoing across the island. What if Jamaica truly had a leader like Ibrahim Traoré? The morning sun burned through the Kingston haze as rumors spread like wildfire. A cabinet minister's phone had been hacked. Overnight, encrypted screenshots began circulating online, showing messages between government officials and foreign advisors. One message in particular froze the nation. "If this Traoré movement continues, we might have to freeze some funding until the situation stabilizes." It was allegedly sent by an American development official to Jamaica's Minister of Finance. The implication was clear: Western aid could be used as a weapon to control local politics. For years, Jamaicans had been told that aid money came to help the poor, to build schools, and improve infrastructure. But now, the people were seeing another side of the story, one that looked more like economic blackmail. At first, the government denied everything. The Prime Minister's office issued a statement saying, "These are fabricated messages designed to destabilize Jamaica's democracy." But people weren't buying it. The screenshots were too detailed, the usernames, the timestamps, even the diplomatic language, it all looked too real. Marcia's face appeared again on social media. Her tone was different now, sharper, more defiant. "If Ibrahim Traoré can expose France's control over Burkina Faso," she said, "then we can expose America's and Britain's control over Jamaica. Enough is enough." The video gained millions of views in just 2 days. Thousands gathered in Kingston Square, carrying cardboard signs painted in red, green, and gold. Some wore shirts that read, "Reclaim Jamaica." Others chanted, "We want no foreign hand pawn we throat." It wasn't just protests. In rural parishes, farmers began blocking roads used by foreign trucks that carried bauxite. They held machetes in their hands, not to attack, but to defend what was theirs. One farmer, an old man named Leroy from Manchester Parish, said to a reporter, "Me grandfada tell me dem tek land fee aluminum long time. But de land neva tek back from dem yet. Now me say enough." The world started paying attention. International media networks called it Jamaica's Awakening. Some described it as the island's first real push for economic sovereignty in modern history. Behind closed doors, however, panic grew among the elite. At the office of the Prime Minister, officials whispered about foreign pressure and maintaining the balance. Rumors said that an emergency meeting was called with U.S. and British diplomats at a luxury villa in Street Andrew. That meeting would later become infamous, the Hope Pastures Meeting, as journalists came to call it. No cameras were allowed, no public statement was ever released. But according to leaked notes from an insider, it was there that one of the most shocking decisions in modern Jamaican history was made. According to the leaked transcript, the Prime Minister allegedly said, "We cannot afford to lose the backing of our partners. If keeping their confidence means silencing a few radicals, then so be it." The diplomat responded calmly, We appreciate your cooperation. Washington and London both value your leadership." That same night, unknown men broke into the offices of the Caribbean Voice, one of the few newspapers supporting the Traoré-inspired movement. Hard drives were stolen, servers wiped clean. The editor-in-chief, a respected journalist named Carlton Myrie, disappeared for 2 weeks. When he finally resurfaced, he held a press conference. His voice shook as he said, "They told me if I keep digging, I'll end up in the sea." That was when Jamaica began to change. Fear mixed with fire. Anger turned into unity. The movement wasn't just about one leader anymore, it was about a nation realizing it had been betrayed for decades. At a massive gathering near Emancipation Park, Marcia took the stage again. Thousands of people cheered her name. She raised a small Jamaican flag and shouted, "They call us radicals because we speak the truth. But listen, who owns the bauxite? Who owns the hotels? Who owns the ports? Not us. Jamaica free in name, but chained in pocket." The crowd roared. It was the biggest protest since independence. But as the people sang, "Get up, stand up for your rights," plainclothes officers moved quietly through the crowd, taking photos, recording faces. That same night, an anonymous source leaked another audio file even more shocking than the first. It contained a recorded conversation between a senior Jamaican official and a foreign corporate executive. The executive could be heard saying, "Keep your people quiet, and your personal account will be taken care of." To which the official replied, "Understood, as long as it doesn't reach Parliament." The next morning, local newspapers refused to print the story. Broadcasters ignored it. But the people had already heard it online. They didn't need proof, they could feel it in their bones. And when one brave independent journalist released the full 12-minute audio on YouTube, it was too late to hide. The world listened in disbelief as Jamaica's leaders were exposed for selling out their own country piece by piece. In the comments, one message stood out and was shared across every social media platform. If Jamaica had a Traoré, this would have never happened. By the end of that week, something unseen began to happen behind the scenes. Soldiers, civil servants, and even young police officers started whispering that maybe the people were right. Maybe, just maybe, Jamaica needed a leader who would finally stand up, not bow down. The government was losing control. For the first time since independence, Jamaica's leaders looked frightened, not of guns, but of truth. The Traoré spirit had become unstoppable. It was in classrooms, churches, taxi stands, and reggae songs. Artists were writing new lyrics about freedom. Preachers were quoting Marcus Garvey again. And young people were flooding the streets with one chant that echoed from Kingston to Montego Bay. "We want back Jamaica." Marcia had become the face of the movement, though she never asked to be. Every word she spoke spread like wildfire. She reminded people of the old heroes, Nanny, Sam Sharp, Garvey, and now Traoré. She said, "Traoré didn't wait for permission. He built schools with his soldiers. He gave the people their dignity back. And if we have to do that here, then so be it." Her message was too powerful to silence, and that made her dangerous. At the same time, leaks from inside the government continued. A whistleblower calling himself the Fisherman began sending documents to independent journalists. The papers revealed how foreign corporations controlled Jamaica's water systems, electricity grid, and telecommunications through complex shell companies registered in tax havens. One document titled Strategic Development Agreement 2030 Vision showed that over 60% of Jamaica's major utilities were owned by companies based in London and Washington. The shocking part? The Jamaican public had never been told. A clause buried deep in the contract read, "The government agrees not to renegotiate ownership shares without prior written consent of the foreign partners." It meant Jamaica couldn't even buy back its own infrastructure without foreign approval. When Marcia read it, she broke down in tears. "So we're not just poor," she whispered. "We're prisoners legally bound to our own colonizers." She decided to go public. One night, on a live online broadcast, she held up the printed documents and said, "They tell you to work hard, but they already sold your country. Every hill, every river, every port, all gone, piece by piece. And they call it development." Within minutes, over 200,000 people were watching live. But what happened next shocked even her. As she was still speaking, the screen suddenly went black. Viewers heard muffled noises, a door slamming, footsteps, shouting. Then, silence. For 12 minutes, the live stream froze. When it finally resumed, the camera was lying sideways, pointing at an empty chair. The chat exploded. People screamed her name, typing non-stop. "Where is Marcia? Dem take her? Ja, protect her!" It took 3 days before she appeared again, this time in a shaky video recorded from an unknown location. Her voice was low, tired, but filled with fire. "They tried to stop me," she said. "They said I was spreading lies, but if speaking truth makes me an enemy, then so be it. I will die with my flag in my hand before I bow again." That video reached every corner of the island. It was reposted by reggae legends, radio hosts, even Jamaicans abroad. The fishermen released more leaks in response, and the revelations were jaw-dropping. It turned out that part of Jamaica's bauxite mining rights, once a symbol of national pride, had been quietly sold to a foreign conglomerate called Carbex Global, a company that claimed to be environmentally conscious. But according to the leaked documents, Carbex Global was secretly owned by the same corporate network that had ties to former colonial powers. Worse, one clause gave the company authority to evict local residents if mining expansion required their land. Dozens of small farming families in Street, Elizabeth, and Manchester were already facing displacement, but the public never knew why. That revelation lit a fuse. Farmers began marching with placards reading, "Our land is not for sale!" and "Carbex out of Jamaica." In a desperate attempt to calm the outrage, the Prime Minister addressed the nation on television. Dressed in a dark suit, he spoke firmly. "These stories are exaggerated. Our partnerships are essential to Jamaica's progress. We cannot survive in isolation." But the people no longer believed him. For the first time in decades, they booed during a national broadcast. On social media, someone edited his speech side by side with a clip of Ibrahim Traoré saying, "We will never kneel to anyone." The contrast went viral. That night, another leak dropped, perhaps the most shocking yet. A confidential intelligence memo labeled "Eyes Only" revealed that foreign consultants had direct access to cabinet meetings via private online briefings. They even had veto power on certain projects funded through Western banks. It was proof that Jamaica's sovereignty was only an illusion. The people couldn't believe it, their own leaders taking orders from foreigners while pretending to serve the nation. The streets erupted again. Protesters burned fake banknotes labeled IMF dollars and held up pictures of Traoré with the words, "Courage has no age." In Spanish Town, police fired tear gas into the crowd, but they stood their ground. Mothers held their children's hands and sang old freedom songs. An old Rastaman shouted, "Babylon system de crumble before we eyes." Everywhere, the same question was being asked, not just whispered anymore, but shouted in anger, in pain, in pride. When will Jamaica have its own Traoré? But as the nation rose, foreign powers began to move. Meetings were held in embassies, plans were drawn up, and somewhere, deep in the shadows, a decision was made to end the movement before it became unstoppable. The next phase would not be about silence anymore. It would be about fear, about punishment, about showing the Jamaican people that defiance comes with a price. And no one, not even Marcia, could imagine just how far they were willing to go to keep Jamaica on its knees. The night the crackdown began, Jamaica's skies glowed red. Not from the sunset, but from fires burning across Kingston. Protesters were clashing with riot police, who had been deployed under something the government called Operation Stability. No one knew exactly who authorized it. But word spread fast. Soldiers were on the streets, and foreign security advisors had been flown in secretly from overseas. Some people said they were Americans. Others whispered they were private contractors, mercenaries in plain clothes. At around midnight, cell service went down across parts of the island. For 2 full hours, Jamaica went dark, disconnected from itself. When service returned, social media was flooded with shocking videos. Police beating unarmed citizens, tear gas thrown into small homes, soldiers dragging young men from corners of downtown Kingston. And in the middle of all this chaos, Marcia disappeared again. Earlier that evening, she had released a new video message, one that many believed was her final warning. "They can take our phones, our power, our leaders," she said, "but they cannot take the fire that already start burn in we heart. Remember this, it's not just about one leader, it's about all Jamaicans finding the courage of Traoré inside them." She ended the message with a trembling voice. "If anything happened to me, don't let them bury the truth." Within hours, her apartment was raided by unidentified men. Witnesses said they arrived in black SUVs with no license plates. They took her, her mother, and every computer inside the house. Then they vanished. The next morning, the Prime Minister appeared again on television, looking pale and shaken. He blamed foreign misinformation campaigns and domestic agitators influenced by anti-Western ideologies. But this time, people noticed something strange. His words didn't sound like his own. His teleprompter froze for a moment, revealing part of a document labeled "Briefing Notes," prepared by Western partners. Someone caught it on camera. The image spread instantly. Jamaicans saw, with their own eyes, proof that even their Prime Minister's speeches were written by foreigners. By the next day, protests grew even larger. Entire neighborhoods refused to work. Public transport shut down. Fishermen blocked the ports. High school students skipped classes to march, chanting "Jamaica Fidi Jamaicans." But the government doubled down. Drones hovered over protest zones. Reports emerged that phone lines were being tapped. And then came the audio leak that would change everything. It was published by an independent online group calling itself the New Garveyites. The file was labeled "Confidential for Embassy Use Only." It captured a conversation between two foreign diplomats discussing a secret economic management plan for Jamaica. One voice said, "As long as the local leadership stays compliant, we maintain control of their ports, their banks, and their trade laws. The key is to make them believe it's for stability." The other voice replied, laughing softly, "Jamaica is a small island with a big ego. Keep them dreaming, and they'll never wake up." That one line, "keep them dreaming, and they'll never wake up," broke the nation's heart. It became the cry of a revolution. On every street wall, graffiti appeared overnight. "Wake up, Jamaica." Even members of the police began to waver. Some quietly passed information to protesters. One officer told a journalist off camera, "We tired of defending lies. We see the truth now." Meanwhile, international news networks began to pick up the story, though cautiously. Headlines read, "Unrest in Jamaica, populist movement demands reform," but none of them dared to mention Traoré's name. Western media avoided it completely. Still, Africans across the continent were watching. In Ghana, a popular radio host said on air, "Maybe the Caribbean is finally remembering Africa." In Burkina Faso itself, social media posts began appearing, "Jamaica, we see you. Stand firm." But inside Jamaica, things were getting worse. Food prices spiked. The government accused the protesters of sabotaging the economy. Foreign investors began pulling out their money, and the currency dropped overnight. It was economic warfare, silent but brutal. The same foreign powers that preached democracy now used poverty as punishment. A secret IMF document, leaked days later, confirmed what many feared. Jamaica was being pressured to sign a new emergency financial support agreement that would give the IMF power to oversee national spending directly. In simple words, Jamaica would lose the last bit of control it had left. When word got out, the island exploded. The people refused. Banners filled the streets. No IMF, no chains. And then, from somewhere unknown, a live broadcast appeared on thousands of phones. It was Marcia. Her hair was messy, her eyes tired, but her spirit unbroken. "They wanted to break me," she said. "They wanted to break all of us. But listen, they can't rule us forever. The day Jamaica finds its own Traoré, the chains will fall." Millions watched. The video became a symbol, the digital equivalent of a freedom flag. Foreign embassies issued urgent evacuation alerts for their citizens. The Jamaican government declared a state of emergency. And behind the scenes, secret negotiations began between high-ranking officials and Western envoys. The envoys reportedly warned, "If this continues, we will cut off all trade. Jamaica will starve." But the people were no longer afraid. They sang Bob Marley songs in the streets, lit candles at night, and prayed for a dawn that would finally belong to them. The system was trembling, but something even more shocking, something that would change Jamaica forever, was about to be revealed. A file so explosive, it would prove that the island's economy, its leaders, and even its future had been sold off in total secrecy decades ago. And when that truth came out, not even the most powerful men in Washington or London could hide it anymore. It began with a single email, one message that slipped through the cracks of secrecy. A whistleblower inside the Ministry of Finance sent it to an independent journalist working for the Caribbean Mirror. The subject line read, "The master agreement, read it before they delete it." Attached was a single PDF file, 312 pages long. Its title, Comprehensive Economic Partnership Framework between the Government of Jamaica and the Western Investment Alliance Classified. Within hours, the journalist realized what he was holding. It wasn't just another development contract, it was the blueprint of Jamaica's captivity. The document was dated back to the early 2000s, signed under previous governments, but quietly renewed every 10 years. The signatories included major Western banks, international corporations, and high-ranking Jamaican officials. The file revealed that almost every major economic decision, from road construction to agriculture, mining, and telecommunications, was bound to this secret agreement. One section read, "In exchange for continued foreign investment and security support, the government of Jamaica agrees to consult with Western partners before implementing any national economic policy that could impact international trade interests." It was a legal way of saying Jamaica couldn't make big decisions without permission from abroad. The journalist published the story online with the headline, "Leaked. The document that proves Jamaica's sovereignty was sold." It went viral within minutes. By nightfall, everyone from Montego Bay to Morant Bay was talking about the master agreement. Churches, schools, and street vendors were discussing it as if it were scripture. And then the names began to circulate: ministers, advisors, and lobbyists who had all benefited from consultancy fees. One of the names that shocked everyone was linked directly to a sitting member of parliament, and even to the Prime Minister's office. The people erupted. They gathered in front of the Parliament building, carrying torches and placards that read, "We want the truth," and "Jamaica, not for sale." But what truly shook the nation was an audio recording released by the Caribbean Mirror the next morning, allegedly capturing a private phone call between a Western corporate executive and a senior Jamaican politician. The executive's voice was calm, polished, and arrogant. "Our arrangement ensures stability. You keep your people calm, and we keep the money flowing. It's simple." The politician's voice trembled. "But the Youth Dem are rising. They're angry. They've seen too much." "Then make them believe you're on their side," the executive replied. "Talk about reform, talk about hope, but don't ever change the system, you understand?" That single line, "Don't ever change the system," became a chant. People screamed it in the streets, in markets, at stoplights. It was no longer just outrage, it was awakening. International outlets could no longer ignore the story. Al Jazeera, BBC Caribbean, Reuters, even The Guardian began reporting about growing anti-Western sentiment in Jamaica. But they avoided the real issue: the exposure of Western control. Meanwhile, government officials scrambled to do damage control. The Prime Minister called for a national address, promising an investigation into the alleged documents. But everyone could see the fear in his eyes. He wasn't speaking like a leader anymore, he was pleading. And then, without warning, the broadcast was interrupted. The screen glitched, the national crest disappeared, and a new message flashed across TVs and phones across the island. "This is not a conspiracy. This is the truth." The voice that followed was calm, strong, and familiar. It was Marcia. "We found the papers. We have the names, and we have proof that for decades, Jamaica was owned, not free. The agreements were signed, the deals were hidden, and every government after independence was forced to play along. This is not politics. This is betrayal." The broadcast lasted less than 5 minutes before the signal was cut. But the damage was done. The people had heard her. Later that night, new files began appearing online contracts signed with Western pharmaceutical companies, foreign mining giants, and hotel groups that controlled prime Jamaican land for as little as $1 dollar per acre. The most shocking file of all was titled Emergency Management Clause, Confidential. It stated that in times of national crisis, Western partners had the right to deploy personnel and resources on Jamaican soil to protect their investments. In plain terms, that meant if Jamaica rebelled or changed course, foreign powers could legally intervene militarily or economically. It was the smoking gun. The proof that Jamaica's independence had been an illusion for more than half a century. The island erupted into fury. Hundreds of thousands marched toward Gordon House again, shouting, crying, waving the Jamaican flag upside down, a sign of distress. But there was more. Late that same night, another leak surfaced, this time, a video. It showed a private dinner between the Prime Minister and several Western ambassadors. The video was recorded secretly, possibly by someone inside the hotel. In the footage, the Prime Minister could be heard saying, "I can't control them anymore. The people won't listen. They think they're free." And one ambassador replied, smirking, "Then remind them who pays their bills." That moment went viral across the Caribbean and Africa. Memes, songs, and posters spread everywhere. Jamaicans abroad protested outside embassies. Diaspora leaders called for sanctions against their own government. For the first time, the world began to realize Jamaica wasn't poor because of corruption alone. It was poor by design. Marsha's voice returned once more in a short message sent from an unknown location. She said, "The chains are not on our hands anymore. They're in our minds, our policies, our contracts. But now that we see them, we can break them." And with that, the story turned from revelation to revolution. The next day, hundreds of thousands of Jamaicans took to the streets in what became known as the March of the Broken Chains. They carried banners that read, "Africa rise, Jamaica awake, and freedom is not alone." But as they marched toward Parliament, military vehicles began to appear. Helicopters hovered above. Reports came in of Western officials holding emergency meetings in Kingston. Something was about to happen, something that would either free Jamaica forever or crush the movement completely. The morning of the final showdown came with an eerie silence. Kingston's streets, usually loud with vendors and car horns, were empty except for banners fluttering in the wind. Across the island, the power grid flickered off, and on some said it was sabotage. Others whispered it was fear. The Prime Minister had declared a nationwide curfew, saying it was to prevent chaos. But everyone knew the truth. He was losing control. From Spanish Town to Ocho Rios, people gathered anyway. They came barefoot, with drums, flags, and songs. The air was heavy with defiance. Farmers came with machetes in hand not to fight, but as symbols of their right to work their land. Women carried portraits of Marcus Garvey, Paul Bogle, and Nanny of the Maroons. Young men painted their faces in the colors of the Jamaican flag. And above it all, on the walls and banners, one name appeared again and again: Traoré. By 10 a.m., nearly 500,000 Jamaicans had filled the streets of Kingston. They sang in unison, voices trembling but fierce. One love, one heart, one Jamaica. It was no longer just a protest. It was an awakening. Inside Gordon House, the Prime Minister sat surrounded by advisors and foreign diplomats. His face was pale, his hands shaking as he read new reports from intelligence officers. The cables were clear. The army was divided. Half of the soldiers refused to fire on civilians. Some had joined the protesters, standing shoulder to shoulder with them. A Western diplomat, red-faced with anger, slammed a folder on the table. "You let this get out of hand," he barked. "If your people take over, you lose your funding, your loans, your access to everything." The Prime Minister whispered, "Maybe that's what they want. Maybe they don't care about loans anymore." The diplomat glared. "Then you'll lose your position and your protection." Outside, the sound of thousands chanting grew louder. A helicopter circled overhead. And then, out of nowhere, the national TV broadcast flickered again, hijacked by an unknown signal. Marsha appeared on screen, live. Her face was bruised, but her eyes blazed with courage. Behind her stood men and women in ordinary clothes, holding files, flash drives, and documents. "To the people of Jamaica," she began, "this is the truth they tried to bury. We have the proof. We have the agreements. Every piece of land sold, every deal signed, every lie told, we found them all." She held up a folder stamped with the government seal. "These are your beaches, your rivers, your mountains, all sold for the price of silence. But today, that silence ends." Sected, the crowd outside Gordon House erupted. People cheered, cried, and fell to their knees in prayer. Then the feed changed. Screens across the island showed the final pages of the master agreement. The words glowed like fire. Renewal clause. To remain in effect until 2070, unless nullified by complete national dissolution. In simple terms, Jamaica had been signed away for 70 years. The reaction was explosive. Soldiers laid down their weapons. Police officers took off their helmets and joined the crowd. From every corner of the island, people poured into Kingston, waving flags and shouting, "Freedom! Freedom! Freedom!" Inside the government building, chaos broke loose. Some ministers tried to flee. Others burned papers in bins. The Prime Minister, his voice trembling, went live for what would be his final speech. "I have been a prisoner in my own office," he said. "For decades, Jamaica was ruled not from Kingston, but from Washington, London, and Paris. I admit it. And I am done lying to my people." He took off his tie, tears filling his eyes. "From this day, the foreign agreements are void. Jamaica will stand alone, free or fallen." The broadcast ended. Minutes later, he vanished from public sight. By evening, the island was in celebration. Bells rang. Church choirs sang in the streets. Drummers pounded rhythms that hadn't been heard since Maroon times. The people called it Freedom Day. Marcia stood on the balcony of the old courthouse, looking down at the sea of faces. She raised the Jamaican flag high and said, "We were told we were too small, too poor, too weak. But today, we proved we are strong. Jamaica is not poor, it was just robbed. And now, we're taking it back." The crowd roared. Fireworks lit the sky over Kingston Harbor. The Western embassies went dark. Flights were canceled. The world was watching, shocked, as Jamaica, the island that once sang about love and freedom, had finally reclaimed both. That night, a strange silence settled over the land. The stars glowed brighter than ever, as if the ancestors themselves were watching. Fishermen along the coast swore they saw light rise from the sea, a shimmering glow that moved like a spirit, hovering above the water, then vanishing into the horizon. And as dawn broke, one headline appeared across local newspapers, printed in bold green letters. "Jamaica is free again. It wasn't the end of the struggle, it was the beginning of a new one." But for the first time in living memory, the people of Jamaica felt something they hadn't felt in generations. Not fear, not dependence, but power. A power born not from aid or foreign approval, but from truth, unity, and courage. And as the island woke to a new sun, one question echoed across the Caribbean, whispered in awe and pride.